I was really looking forward to All Grown Up, and I'm really disappointed that Amazon Prime decided to only upload two-thirds of this episode. And after watching it on there on the Paramount channel and realizing it cut off about two-thirds of the way in, I went onto iTunes, and apparently it's not available to purchase in the UK through iTunes. So I'm actually only discussing the first two-thirds-ish of the episode. I actually had to go onto fandom.com to look up the episode description, because when it ended I thought, that ended rather abruptly. And then I read the full plot outline and realised, yeah, they just didn't bother uploading the full episode, so I don't know what happened there. However, I watched enough of it to form an opinion, and the opinion is generally that I enjoyed it. This is the first episode of the 8th season of Rugrats, and it's also considered the pilot to the TV show All Grown Up, so I kind of knew what I was expecting with this because I, of course, grew up watching that show. But I have to say, judging it, it's hard. I can't judge it with a fresh perspective because I knew what to expect to a degree. But even saying that, I think it was a really good way to introduce these characters being much older. It's 10 years in the future, and the way this comes about is the Rugrats are watching a TV show about a scientist who invents a time machine, and they decide that they want to go into the future, as they call it, which I thought was absolutely adorable. And Angelica won't let them play with her karaoke machine, which I'm sure they called a tapioca machine or something. And interestingly, Tommy helps himself to it, which is quite uncharacteristic for Tommy. But he's fed up of Angelica breaking their stuff and not letting the babies play with her stuff. So he takes this karaoke machine, and they all hide in a cupboard, and they decide to get away from Angelica's wrath. They need to go into the future. And then one by one, they all come out of the cupboard being 10 years older. And I thought by bringing them out one by one, it gave the viewer a chance, maybe 15 seconds each, to just absorb the new appearance, the new voices, to get used to the new characters 10 years in the future. And I thought that was a really nice way of doing it. As I said, because I've seen the TV show, I can't really give a first impression of what I thought of the character designs, but Chucky is still wearing a blue shirt with a little planet on it, and I thought that was a pretty nice idea. The only thing I don't like about this is that they're in the same class at school, Tommy and Chucky, and Phil and Lil, but Chucky's older, and Chucky should be in the year above them. Unless one could argue maybe he was born the day after the cutoff for, when you go into the year before or the year below. I don't know, but really he shouldn't have been in the same class as them. So I thought that was a bit of an oversight, but other than that, it's a really, really sweet episode. The narrative focuses on this medallion that Stu is wearing to go to a dance. And Angelica wants this medallion, but she wants it to show off that it's the same necklace or similar to the design that this new pop sensation is wearing, and they're all supposed to be going to this concert together, and she wants to wear Uncle Stu's medallion, and she tries to convince Tommy to get it for her, but things, as is usually the case, don't go according to plan. In honesty, it's not the most interesting narrative, but I don't think it matters, because the novelty is what drives this forward. It's a two-parter, it's a double episode, and in fact, I think it's slightly longer than a double episode because apparently it's meant to be 60 minutes. I watched, I think, just shy of 40 minutes. And the narrative could have been about anything. I don't think it really mattered because the novelty is seeing these characters being older, seeing how they conduct themselves, what they look like. Spike, bless him, looks rather worse for wear. There was also, it really played with the emotions. This is a spoiler. So do I have anything else to say that's not a spoiler? Well, I guess I'll sum up to the best of my ability, having not seen the final third. I've read the plot description online, and it seems like it concludes in a way that I'd be satisfied with. But to sum up, it's very well animated, it's creative, it's interesting to see the babies not as babies. What I will say is that it's quite peculiar because the target audience shifts. The target audience for All Grown Up, the TV show, is slightly older than the target audience for Rugrats, which means that this episode has a different target audience to pretty much every episode of Rugrats, which is just an interesting thing to think about. Who is this episode actually aimed at? Because it wouldn't appeal, or very, very young Rugrats viewers wouldn't really find it interesting or even necessarily follow it. So I thought that was quite interesting. It's got either two audiences or no audience. I'm not entirely sure. But other than that, yeah, it was pretty good, and I thought it was a nice way to introduce the show. And I feel like they probably used this as a test, depending on the feedback for this episode. I imagine would have helped to steer the direction of the TV show that eventually came not long after this. But the spoiler that I was going to mention is when we see a photo of Grandpa Lou. Didi's in the kitchen and she's talking as if she's talking about Grandpa Lou, but it turns out she's talking about Spike, but we see Grandpa Lou in the photo, and I thought, he died. That's so sad. And then about 5 minutes later, he's driving the bus. Like, how dare they toy with my emotions that way? It was very cleverly done, I have to say, because I didn't expect to see him driving the bus. I can't remember if he's in the TV show or not. I assume he is. But that was very effective. Very, very, very creative episode. Unclear who the target audience is meant to be because it wouldn't appeal to the younger Rugrats viewer as much. But all grown-up viewers are maybe, in theory, a little too old to watch Rugrats in terms of marketing and the way things are, marketed at people. So it's quite peculiar. But I enjoyed it. I enjoyed 2/3 of it. Honestly, Paramount on Amazon Prime. I don't know who uploaded those episodes, but they're in a really chaotic order, and I don't know how they managed to upload about 2/3 of an episode. So I'm a little bit disappointed, but ultimately it was enjoyable. I really liked watching it, and it's made me very excited to get back to watching All Grown Up, which I will do once I've finished with Rugrats.